Okay, let's welcome in Lyn Alden, founder at Lyn Alden Investment Strategy. Lyn, good to have you with us here as always. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, is the US market fall over, you think? 2 days now. Market's been up 2% on Friday and about 0.5% last night.
So I think that it's oversold and it's due for this bounce here. I think some of the key headline risks are still present. And I think that there's a larger chance of a pretty large, like a more long-term rotation here. I think for a very long time, global capital has been overweight U.S. stocks. It's kind of been one of the main places to invest in town. And some of those macro things have kind of started to structurally shift. And some of those things feed on each other. So, for example, the U.S. is very financialized. And so lower U.S. stock prices can damage the wealth effect. A weaker dollar has a similar role. And with increased uncertainty around tariffs, business investment conditions, and stock investment conditions, there are just more headline risks now. And so I think that while these moves don't go in a straight line up or down, I still think that there's really more attractive opportunities outside of the U.S. in a lot of areas that have been kind of considered uninvestable for a number of years.
Okay. Lyn, what's your sense? Yesterday, at least, the U.S. retail sales data, that did not deliver any shockers. The market's kind of cruising along for the time being. But do you see this as just a bit of a pullback from maybe oversold levels? Or do you think we're past the worst of the whole tariff tantrum?
So I think the sharpest activity is behind us, both in terms of headline risk, and in terms of the impacts on the economy. I still think there's some to go because some of these downstream effects impact the lag. Because if businesses are delaying capex spending until they have more clarity, that can take months to resolve. And even the ongoing retaliations and negotiations are still ongoing. And when we look at kind of the not just tariffs, but also the fiscal and monetary support, we're at a place where the U.S. has kind of been gradually pulling back fiscal support. There's things like the DOGE program that are attempting to trim the budget deficit. We still have a Federal Reserve that's on the hawkish side. Meanwhile, as Europe kind of ramps up defense, which is a form of fiscal stimulus partially, and as we see China continuing to drip out various types of stimulus, some of these dynamics have shifted because in the past several years, the U.S. was the very kind of fiscal heavy economy, while we saw more austerity out of a number of other economies. And at least around the margins, there's been a little bit of rotation there. And I think that will probably continue to translate to equity performance.
What about India, Lyn? Always the question, right? Because we've underperformed versus China lately, and that's largely because of China's earlier underperformance. Now that people are finding value in China, a lot of flows going there, the Indian valuations have moderated as well. What are your expectations here? And any particular stock sector that you like here?
So I'm fairly bullish. I think it's showing a good sign that it's stabilizing here. As you pointed out, China was, really like oversold. They were at very low valuation levels. India has always been considered investable from, say, the perspective of here in the U.S. or elsewhere, whereas China went through a multi-year phase of largely being considered uninvestable. People were worried about, potential sanctions, potential geopolitical risks, as well as the fact that they had that period of going after their big tech stocks. But as a lot of that has shifted, that's become more investable from a very low base. I think that maybe that explosive move is behind in China. I still think they have room to go higher. And I do think that while India was never as oversold or as cheap as some of these other places, I do think it's due for potential stabilization and heading north from here.
All right, Lyn, thank you very much for that. It's always a pleasure. Quick conversation, but insightful. Thank you.